The varsity quarterback's hand was inches from her chest when the fire alarm went off. But that wasn't the shocking part. What stunned Oakwood High's entire senior class was watching their Golden Boys college scholarship evaporate in real time on every screen in the gymnasium. All because of the girl everyone called Mouse. In 47 minutes, Cordelia Ashworth would transform from invisible victim to the most feared whistleblower in school history. And the spring formal would become ground zero for a revolution nobody saw coming. Before we dive into this explosive night, I need you to know something. If you've ever felt powerless against someone bigger, stronger, or more popular, this story is your battle cry. Hit that like button if you believe the quiet ones are the most dangerous when pushed too far. And if you want to support more stories that expose the truth about what really happens in our schools, that thanks button below helps us keep shining light in dark corners. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps another silenced voice find its power. Now, let's rewind to where it all began. 4 weeks before the spring formal, Cordelia Ashworth was a ghost haunting Oakwood High's corridors. At 17, she embodied everything the social hierarchy deemed forgettable: thrift store cardigans that hung loose on her thin frame, prescription glasses held together with clear tape, and a habit of pressing herself against walls as if she could phase through them. Her strawberry blonde hair fell in limp strands around a face that might have been pretty if anyone bothered to look past the second-hand clothes and hunched shoulders. But Cordelia had learned invisibility was armor. In a school where your worth was measured in Instagram followers and whose party invitations you received, being nobody meant being safe. She spent her lunches in the abandoned darkroom on the 3rd floor, developing film photographs, while others staged their digital lives. She turned in assignments early, kept her test scores deliberately average, and navigated Oakwood's treacherous social waters by simply not making waves. That strategy shattered on a Tuesday morning in the chemistry lab. "Ashworth, you're with Morrison." "Mr." Henley announced, his monotone voice barely penetrating the pre-first period haze. Around the room, students groaned or cheered based on their assigned partners for the semester-long project worth 30% of their grade. Cordelia's stomach plummeted. Bryce Morrison, 6'3" of entitled muscle, quarterback of the undefeated Oakwood Warriors, and undisputed king of the senior class. His father owned Morrison Construction, the company that had built half the town, including the new athletic complex, with Bryce's name already etched on a plaque. His mother sat on the school board. His future was mapped in championship rings and business degrees. Bryce sauntered over, his Letterman jacket announcing his arrival before his cologne did. He dropped into the seat beside her, legs spread wide. Claiming space, she instinctively surrendered. His friends Tyler Chen and Marcus Rivera flanked him immediately, their presence transforming her quiet corner into hostile territory. "Looks like you hit the jackpot." Mouse, Tula, Snail, using the nickname that had followed her since freshman year when she'd squeaked in surprise during a fire drill. "Partnered with Morrison? That's like winning the lottery for someone like you." Cordelia kept her eyes on her notebook, pen trembling slightly as she wrote the date. 3 years of practice had taught her silence was survival. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Tyler's hand slammed down on her notebook. "It's rude not to look at people when they're speaking. Didn't your mom teach you manners?" "Oh wait," he exchanged smirks with Marcus. "That's right. She's too busy cleaning our houses to teach you anything." The words landed like physical blows. Cordelia's mother did work for a cleaning service, taking on extra shifts to keep them afloat after her father's construction accident left him unable to work. It was honest work, hard work, but in Oakwood's ecosystem of privilege, it marked them as lesser. "Leave it, Ty," Bryce said, but his tone held amusement, not warning. "We need her to do the actual work. You know I can't fail this class." And there it was, the transaction laid bare. Cordelia would do the project. Bryce would take the credit, and the natural order would remain undisturbed. She'd seen this play out countless times. Smart scholarship kids carrying athletic stars through academics while administrators looked the other way. The unspoken rule that kept Oakwood's championship teams eligible and its donation pipeline flowing. Actually, Cordelia heard herself say, the words escaping before wisdom could cage them. The project requires individual lab reports. We'll need to work together. The silence that followed felt like the pause before a car crash. Tyler's face darkened. Marcus whistled low, but Bryce smiled. And somehow that was worse than anger. Work together, he repeated, leaning close enough that she could see the calculation in his hazel eyes. Sure, Mouse. We'll work real close together. His hand found her knee under the lab table, fingers pressing through the thin fabric of her second-hand jeans. Cordelia froze, caught between the instinct to flee and the knowledge that any reaction would only entertain them more. Around them, classmates carefully avoided looking, their studied ignorance. Another form of complicity. Morrison, hands where I can see them. Mr. Henley called out, not looking up from his grading. This is chemistry, not anatomy. Scattered laughter provided cover for Bryce to withdraw his hand, but his message was delivered. Cordelia belonged to him now, at least for this project. And in Oakwood High's food chain, what Bryce Morrison wanted, Bryce Morrison got tably. The next 3 weeks unfolded like a slow-motion disaster. Bryce's interpretation of working together meant Cordelia doing calculations while he invaded her space, meant study sessions, where his friends would surround her in the library and make comments about her clothes, her body, her mother's job. He'd show up at her locker between classes, boxing her in with his bulk, while passing students pretended not to see. You smell nice today. Mouse, he'd murmur, face too close, hand braced above her head. New shampoo? Or is that just fear? The worst part was the plausible deniability. Every touch could be explained as accidental. Every comment walked right up to the line without crossing into something reportable. When she'd tried talking to her guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson had given her a sympathetic look that died when Cordelia mentioned Bryce's name. Boys will be boys, she'd said, the words sour with resignation. And Bryce Morrison, well, he's under a lot of pressure this season. Maybe try to be understanding? The semester's almost over. Understanding. As if Cordelia didn't understand perfectly, she understood that Bryce's 47 touchdown passes mattered more than her safety, that his father's donations counted more than her dignity, that in the careful mathematics of Oakwood High, she was an acceptable loss. But Cordelia had something the administrators didn't count, on a dark room full of evidence and a grandmother who'd taught her that nice girls might not make history, but smart girls could rewrite it. The photography had started as therapy after her father's accident. While he relearned to walk, she learned to see. The darkroom became her sanctuary, the only place in school where she controlled the narrative. What began as artistic expression evolved into documentation. When she realized her camera saw what others chose to ignore, she had photographs of Tyler forcing freshmen to kneel and bark for their backpacks, Marcus destroying a scholarship student's art project while teachers were conveniently absent, and Bryce Golden Boy Bryshad, a particular habit he thought happened outside camera range. Every Thursday after practice, he'd corner girls in the equipment hallway by the gym. Always underclassmen. Always scholarship students or those without social protection. His routine was practiced. The casual lean against the wall blocking escape, the wandering hands dismissed as friendly touches, the whispered suggestions that stopped just short of actionable threats. The girls would emerge shaken, uniforms askew, while Bryce returned to his friends with conquest in his stride. Cordelia had been documenting it for months, developing the film in secret, building a file that lived beneath loose floorboards in the darkroom. She'd told herself she was waiting for the right moment. But really, she'd been waiting for courage. The spring formal invitation changed everything. It appeared in her locker on Monday. Expensive cardstock that smelled like cologne and menace. You're going to be my date to spring formal. It read in Bryce's handwriting, not a question, a command. Wear something nice for once. Red. Short. I'll pick you up at 7. Cordelia stared at the invitation, mind racing. The spring formal was Oakwood's social supernova, the night where the hierarchy crystallized under disco lights and fruit punch. Being Bryce's date meant being displayed like a trophy. meant whatever happened after would be her fault for saying yes. It meant, oh my God. Did Bryce Morrison just ask you to formal? Cordelia spun to find Madison Wells and her court of perfectly contoured faces staring at the invitation. Madison, whose mother ran the PTA with an iron French manicure, whose Instagram stories dictated Monday morning fashion, who dated Bryce sophomore year until she'd gotten clingy and he'd moved on. This is a joke, Madison declared, snatching the invitation. This is obviously a prank. Bryce Morrison doesn't date charity cases. Give it back, Cordelia said quietly. Madison's eyes narrowed. Or what? You'll tell your mommy? Oh, wait. She'll be too busy scrubbing my toilet to care. The hallway filled with cruel laughter. Someone had their phone out. Recording. This would be on everyone's story within minutes. Mouse, trying to rise above her station, getting slapped down where she belonged. But Cordelia saw something else in Madison's perfectly lined eyes. Fear. Fear that Bryce had chosen someone beneath them all, that the social order might not be as fixed as they pretended. Fear that if someone like Cordelia could catch Bryce's attention, what did that make the rest of them? Keep it, Cordelia said, shouldering past Madison's shocked face. I have my own plans for formal. That night, in the safety of the dark room's red light, Cordelia made her decision. She spread out months of photographs like evidence in a case she was building. Bryce's hand on sophomore Lily Chen's thigh, his body caging freshman Emma Rodriguez against her locker, his fingers tangled in junior Sarah Kim's hair as she tried to pull away. A pattern of predation protected by privilege. She thought about all the girls who'd transferred schools, who'd quit sports teams to avoid the equipment hallway, who'd made themselves smaller trying to escape notice. She thought about her mother coming home exhausted from cleaning Madison's house, her father's medical bills stamped denied by insurance, the acceptance letter from Northwestern she'd hidden because even with scholarships, they couldn't afford it. Then she thought about the spring formal, hundreds of witnesses, social media documentation, the whole school watching their golden boy crowned king, the perfect stage for a different kind of coronation. Cordelia began planning. She started with reconnaissance. Using her invisibility to gather intelligence, the formal committee met Tuesdays in the art room, where she learned about the new digital projection system that would display a slideshow of senior memories throughout the night. The AV Club, desperate for volunteers, barely noticed when she offered to help with setup. She discovered Bryce had already ordered a crown, an actual crown, for when he inevitably won king. Tyler was organizing an after-party at his family's lake house. Explicitly seniors, only with a wink that meant select juniors would be invited based on their willingness to play along. Marcus had sourced alcohol through his older brother, enough to ensure plausible deniability for whatever happened after midnight. The pieces of their plan became clear. Public claim at the dance, private conquest at the after-party, another girl's reputation destroyed by Monday morning. Except this time, they'd chosen the wrong mouse. Cordelia's counter-strategy required three things: access, evidence, and timing. Access came through her AV Club cover. Evidence lived in her darkroom files and a crucial USB drive she'd been cultivating. Timing would be everything. The USB drive was her masterpiece. For 3 weeks, she'd been recording Bryce's private conversations using a phone she'd found his old one, carelessly discarded after an upgrade, still logged into his cloud storage. The things she'd discovered went beyond harassment. Grade tampering was just the beginning. Bryce and his crew had a whole system, threatening teachers with false accusations if they didn't curve grades, stealing test answers from the principal's secretary's computer, even forcing smarter students to take online tests for them. But the crown jewel was a video from Tyler's phone. Bryce, at a party, bragging about his conquests, rating girls by how much they cried, planning who to target next with the clinical precision of a predator. She'd backed everything up in 3 locations, including one her computer-savvy cousin in Chicago held as insurance. If anything happened to her before formal, he had instructions to send it all to local news stations and the State Board of Education. The week of formal arrived with spring thunder that rattled windows and nerves alike. Cordelia maintained her routine classes. Darkroom, Home while, underneath. Revolution fermented. She turned down Bryce's invitation publicly in the cafeteria. Her quiet, no somehow louder than the lunchroom's chaos. What did you say? Bryce's voice carried that dangerous edge between amusement and anger. I said no. Cordelia met his eyes, steadily. I already have plans. The cafeteria fell silent. Forks frozen, midway to mouths. Nobody said no to Bryce Morrison. Certainly not scholarship mice who should be grateful for the attention. You're confused, Bryce said, standing slowly, using his height like a weapon. Let me explain how this works. I asked nicely. That was me being generous. You don't get to say no. Actually, I do. Cordelia's voice stayed calm even as her heart hammered. It's called consent. They covered it in that assembly you skipped to get high under the bleachers. Someone gasped. Chula stood, fists clenched. Marcus looked between them like he was watching a nature documentary about prey animals that suddenly grew fangs. Bryce smiled, that particular smile that preceded destruction. You're going to regret this. Mouse. Friday night. You'll be begging me to notice you exist. I'm counting on it, Cordelia said, and walked away with her tray, leaving silence in her wake. The retaliation was swift and vicious. Her locker was vandalized with words that made the janitor blanch. Her books disappeared and reappeared, water-damaged. Someone posted her mother's work schedule online, with suggestions about what services she might offer after hours. Cordelia documented everything, adding to her evidence file. Thursday night. She worked alone in the AV room, allegedly finishing the senior slideshow. In reality, she was creating something else, entirely. A presentation that would run exactly once, at exactly the right moment. Seen by everyone who mattered. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp sunshine that made everything look like a movie set. Cordelia spent the day in careful preparation. She'd found a dress at a vintage shop, not red, not short, but a flowing emerald creation from the 60s that made her look like she'd stepped out of a different story entirely. Her grandmother, who'd been a court reporter in the 70s, and knew about patient revenge, helped with her hair and makeup. You sure about this, baby? She asked, pinning an antique brooch to Cordelia's dress, a small silver mouse with diamond eyes. Someone has to be, Cordelia replied, checking the USB drive hidden in her clutch one final time. She arrived at the dance alone, timing it for maximum crowd coverage. 8:45 p.m. When the formal court would be announced at 9. When the gymnasium was packed and phones were out to capture the crowning moment, the theme was Enchanted Evening, which translated to dollar store stars hanging from the ceiling and glitter on every surface. The DJ played sanitized hip-hop, while chaperones pretended not to notice the smell of vodka wafting from the bathroom. It was every high school dance ever. Except tonight would be different. Cordelia spotted Bryce immediately. How could she miss him? He stood at the center of his universe, Madison draped on his arm in the red dress meant for another victim. They looked perfect together, the golden couple restored to their rightful place, natural order maintained. Tyler noticed her first, elbowing Bryce and pointing. She watched the calculation cross Bryce's face's surprise. Anger. Then something darker, he whispered to Marcus, who nodded and melted into the crowd. Cordelia made her way to the AV booth where Jeremy from Tech Crew sat surrounded by cables and monitors. He barely looked up when she approached. Hey, need to make a quick adjustment to the slideshow, she said, producing the USB drive, found some last-minute senior photos. Whatever, Jeremy mumbled, focused on his phone. You know the system? She did. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, uploading her file. Setting the timer, 9 p.m. exactly, right after the formal court was announced. She pocketed the USB drive and melted back into the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Principal Morisonges, Bryce's uncle, because nepotism ran deep in Oakwood, took the stage. It's time to announce this year's spring formal court. The crowd pressed forward. Phones rose like salutes. Cordelia positioned herself with clear sightlines to both the stage and the projection screen. Your spring formal king is surprising. Absolutely no one. Bryce Morrison. Thunderous applause. Bryce strutted onto stage, accepting his crown with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been denied anything. Madison beamed beside him, restored to her throne. Order maintained. And your spring formal queen is… Principal Morrison fumbled with the envelope, frowning. This can't be right. Just read it, someone shouted. Cordelia Ashworth? The gymnasium erupted in confusion. Cordelia stayed frozen, watching Bryce's face cycle through emotion shock, rage, realization. This wasn't part of anyone's plan. Get up here. Mouse! Tyler's voice carried over the chaos, dripping with malice. Come get your crown. The crowd parted, creating a pathway lined with phones and hostile faces. Cordelia walked slowly, emerald dress catching the light, mousebroche glittering. She climbed the stage stairs as the slideshow began behind her. Innocent senior memories cycling across the giant screen. Principal Morrison held out a tiara like it might bite. There seems to be some mistake. No mistake, Cordelia said clearly, accepting the crown. I nominated myself, paid the fee, followed all the rules. Isn't that what matters at Oakwood, following rules? She turned to face the crowd. Queen's crown perched on her strawberry blonde hair. Below, she could see Madison's face twisted in fury. Tyler pushing through the crowd. Marcus nowhere to be seen. But most importantly, she could see the countdown on the projection screen. 10 seconds. You think this is funny? Bryce grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You think you can embarrass me? 5 seconds. No, Cordelia said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. I think I can expose you. 3 seconds. What are you talking about? 1 second. The senior slideshow dissolved. In its place, Cordelia's presentation began. The first image filled the screen, Bryce's hand on Lily Chen's thigh, her face a mask of frozen discomfort. Then Emma Rodriguez pressed against her locker, tears visible. Sarah Kim trying to duck under his arm. A dozen more photos, each time-stamped, each showing the same pattern of predation. The gymnasium went silent, except for the click-whir of the auto-advancing slides. Then came the audio, Bryce's voice echoing through the speakers. The scholarship bitches are the easiest. They know nobody will believe them. Their moms work for our families. They can't afford to make waves. Tyler's laugh followed. Remember that freshman last year? Cried so hard she threw up. That was hilarious. Bryce's recorded voice agreed. This year, I'm thinking bigger. That mouse in my chemistry class, bet I can make her beg by formal. The presentation shifted to document screenshots of altered grades, stolen tests, threatening messages to teachers, email chains between Bryce and his uncle discussing how to bury complaints, a paper trail of systematic abuse protected by power. Turn it off! Principal Morrison screamed at the AV booth. But Jeremy sat frozen, staring at the screen. Someone turn it off. But Cordelia had been thorough. The presentation was running from 3 separate sources, untraceable and unstoppable. Even cutting the power wouldn't help. Too many phones were recording, live streaming, sharing. You're done, Bryce snarled, releasing her arm to lunge for the AV booth. But the crowd had shifted, no longer parting for him. Students he'd terrorized stood firm, creating a wall of bodies between him and escape. No, Cordelia said, adjusting her crown. You're done. The final slide appeared. Contact information for the State Board of Education, the Athletics Association, local news outlets. If you've been affected by harassment at Oakwood High, you're not alone. Speak up. Document everything. The silence ends tonight. The screen went dark. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Lily Chen stepped forward, voice shaking but clear. He assaulted me sophomore year. I have photos of the bruises. Emma Rodriguez next. Me too. I have the messages he sent after. One by one, girls stepped forward. Not just Bryce's victims, Tyler's, Marcus's, others who'd hidden in the shadows of Oakwood's toxic culture. The dam had broken, and the flood was devastating. This is fake, Bryce's voice cracked, crown askew. She's lying. They're all lying. But his uncle had gone pale, phone pressed to his ear, probably fielding calls from the school board, reporters, lawyers. Madison had backed away, her court dissolving as self-preservation kicked in. "Security footage doesn't lie," Cordelia said quietly. "Your dad's construction company installed cameras in the equipment hallway last summer. They record everything. I think the files might have been anonymously sent to the police tonight." That was when Bryce Morrison, golden boy of Oakwood High, untouchable king of the social hierarchy, finally understood what it felt like to be prey. Rainer tried to, but the exits were blocked by students with phones, recording his downfall for posterity. He spun wildly, looking for allies, finding only the faces of those he'd stepped on during his climb to the top. "This isn't over," he screamed at Cordelia. "You know who my father is? We'll destroy you. Your mom will never work in this town again. You'll what?" Cordelia stepped forward, crown catching the light. "Threaten me? Hurt me? Make my life miserable? You already played those cards, Bryce. And you forgot the first rule of poker: never bet everything, unless you're sure you have the winning hand." She pulled out her phone, showing a recording app still running. "Everything you just said is being live-streamed to my cloud storage and my cousin in Chicago. Add witness intimidation to the list." The sound Bryce made wasn't quite human, Raj. And fear, and the death of entitlement, he lunged at her, hands reaching for her throat. He never made it. A wall of girls stood between them suddenly. Lily, Emma, Sarah, others whose names Cordelia didn't know, but whose faces she recognized from hallways and bathrooms where they'd hidden their tears. They stood shoulder to shoulder, protecting her as she'd protected them. "Security!" Principal Morrison's voice cracked over the microphone. Everyone remained calm. But there was no more calm to be had. Parents were arriving, summoned by frantic texts. News vans were pulling up outside, tipped off by anonymous calls. The spring formal had become ground zero for something bigger than any of them. Cordelia felt a hand on her shoulder, gentle, not threatening. She turned to find Mrs. Shen, Lily's mother, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "She tried to tell me, but I believed them when they said she was being dramatic." More parents appeared, surrounding their daughters. Apologies and anger, mixing in equal measure. Cordelia watched Bryce being escorted out by security, his crown fallen, his kingdom in ruins. "You realize what you've done?" Madison appeared at her elbow, voice venomous. "You've destroyed everything. The social order, the traditions." "Good." Cordelia cut her off. It needed destroying. She walked off the stage, crown still perched on her head, emerged dress flowing. The crowd parted again, but differently this time, with something almost like respect. She made it halfway across the gym before her legs started shaking, adrenaline finally catching up. "Dahlia." Her grandmother pushed through the crowd, silver hair wild, vintage purse clutched like a weapon. "I saw the news alert. Are you—" Cordelia fell into her arms, crown tumbling, finally allowing herself to feel the terror she'd been suppressing for weeks. Around them, the gymnasium churned with chaos, police arriving, parent demanding answers, students choosing sides. "You did it, baby," her grandmother whispered. "You stood up. They'll come after us." Cordelia managed. The Morrisons. The others, Mom's job, already handled. Her grandmother's smile was sharp as winter. "Your cousin uploaded everything to a dozen news outlets, and the FBI's tip line about 20 minutes ago. The Morrisons are about to have bigger problems than a cleaning lady who knows her rights." Cordelia pulled back, staring at her grandmother's satisfied expression. "You knew, baby? I've been keeping your secret since you were stealing cookies. You think I didn't notice you coming home with bruises? Didn't see you planning something in that dark room?" She straightened Cordelia's crown. "I was just waiting for you to be ready. My granddaughter, the warrior queen." The rest of the night blurred police statements, parent meetings, Principal Morrison's suspension pending investigation. Cordelia found herself in the eye of a hurricane she'd created, calm while destruction whirled around her. By midnight, number Oakwood exposed was trending. News outlets picked up the story. Shy girl exposes culture of abuse at elite high school. The security footage from the equipment hallway had been reviewed, confirming everything. 3 school board members resigned. The Morrison construction logo was being removed from the athletic complex. Cordelia sat on the gymnasium steps. Emerald dress pooled around her, watching her revolution unfold. Other girls had joined her, the ones who'd spoken up. The ones still finding their voices, they sat in silence that felt like solidarity. Survivors of a war they hadn't chosen, but had finally won. "So, what happens now?" Lily Chen asked softly. Cordelia looked at the crown in her hand, sheep metal and paste diamonds, but somehow heavier than mountains. "Now we rebuild. Better. They'll try to silence us again," Emma warned. "They always do. Let them try." Cordelia stood, extending hands to pull the others up. "We're not mice anymore." As they walked back into the gymnasium, where parents and police were still sorting through the wreckage of Oakwood's carefully constructed facade, Cordelia felt something shift. The hallways would be different Monday. The hierarchy had crumbled. The silent had spoken. But most importantly, the girl everyone called Mouse had remembered she had teeth. The spring formal of 2024 would go down in Oakwood High history, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Not for the decorations or the music or the royalty crowned. It would be remembered as the night the quiet girl brought down a kingdom. The night silence became a roar. The night nice girls made history after all. Monday arrived, wrapped in storm clouds, and the kind of tension that made the air taste metallic. Cordelia stood outside Oakwood High at 6:45 a.m., watching news vans circle like vultures. The school that had been her prison for 3 years looked different now, smaller somehow. Its brick facade, less imposing when you'd already torn down what it protected. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing all weekend. Death threats mixed with messages of support, interview requests tangled with legal warnings. She'd turned it off Sunday night, choosing sleep over the digital mob. But standing here now, emerald vintage coat wrapped tight against the spring chill, she couldn't avoid reality anymore. "Cordelia! Cordelia Ashworth!" Reporters surged forward. Microphones extended like weapons. She'd expected this. Her grandmother had coached her through possible responses, but the reality still felt surreal. The mouse had become the story. "Is it true Bryce Morrison's father tried to bribe you? What do you say to claims you doctored the evidence? Will you be pressing charges?" Cordelia kept walking, eyes fixed on the front doors, where Principal Morrison's name had already been removed from the dedication plaque. She'd prepared for many outcomes, but hadn't anticipated how quickly institutions protected themselves by cutting loose their own. Inside, the hallways felt like a held breath. Students pressed against lockers as she passed, some recording, others whispering. She caught fragments. Heard the Morrisons move to a hotel. Tyler's dad hired 3 lawyers. My mom says she's a hero. Her locker had been replaced over the weekend. The vandalized one presumably kept as evidence. The new one gleamed innocent and unmarked, but Cordelia still hesitated before opening it. Inside, instead of threats, she found flowers, dozens of paper flowers, each with a message. "Thank you for speaking up. You gave me courage. We're not alone anymore." Quite the transformation. Cordelia turned to find Miss Hernandez, her AP history teacher, holding a steaming mug that probably wasn't coffee given the early hour and recent chaos. "From mouse to revolutionary in one night," the teacher continued, voice carefully neutral. "Though I suspect you've been planning this transformation for a while, sometimes revolution is just evolution that got tired of waiting." Cordelia replied, gathering the paper flowers carefully. Miss Hernandez studied her with the kind of look that saw too much. "Walk with me, Miss Ashworth. I believe we need to discuss your immediate future." They walked through empty hallways, past the trophy case where Bryce's championships still gleamed, past the painted murals of school spirit that now seemed like propaganda posters for a fallen regime. "The school board held an emergency meeting yesterday," Miss Hernandez said quietly. "There are going to be significant change. Interim principal starts today. Full investigation into the grade tampering. Several teachers have been suspended pending review." "Including you?" Cordelia asked, noting the boxes in Miss Hernandez's classroom. "Voluntary leave. It seems my habit of reporting incidents that were subsequently buried makes me a liability," she smiled bitterly. 23 reports over 5 years. All dismissed. All involving the same core group of students. Cordelia felt the weight of how many adults had tried and been silenced. How deep did the rot go? "There's something else. Miss..." Hernandez pulled a folder from her desk. "This arrived this morning. Addressed to you." The Northwestern University logo made Cordelia's heart skip inside. A letter on official stationery. "Dear Miss Ashworth, we have been following recent events with great interest. Your demonstrated courage in documenting and exposing systematic abuse shows exactly the kind of integrity we value. We would like to discuss expanding your scholarship package to include full room and board. Additionally, our journalism department is very interested in your photographic documentation work. They're not the only ones. Miss," Hernandez added, "Columbia, Yale, USC. My email is full of inquiries about you. Turns out universities appreciate students who stand up to corruption." Who knew? Cordelia sank into a chair. Overwhelmed. She'd been so focused on surviving Friday night, she hadn't thought about after. "I can't afford full rides. Cordelia, all of them. Plus the Times wants to hire you as a student contributor while you're in school." "Miss," Hernandez's smile turned genuine. "You didn't just expose Bryce Morrison. You showed the world what one person with evidence and courage can do. That's valuable." The bell rang, shattering their bubble of calm. Within seconds, the hallways flooded with students, and Cordelia found herself at the center of a storm she'd created but couldn't control. "Cordelia!" She turned to see Lily Chen pushing through the crowd, followed by Emma Rodriguez and Sarah Kim. They formed a protective diamond around her. Walking as one unit toward first period, "Madison's telling everyone you planted evidence," Emma warned. "She's got her whole crew backing her version." "Let her," Sarah said fiercely. "We've got truth on our side. And security footage. And literally hundreds of witnesses who saw Bryce attack her on stage." But Cordelia knew it wouldn't be that simple. The Morrisons had money, connections, generations of influence. You didn't topple an empire without facing the counterattack. It came during third period. She was in the darkroom because some habits die hard when the door burst open. Light flooded in, destroying the prints she'd been developing. Marcus Rivera stood silhouetted in the doorway. And he wasn't alone. "Hello, Mouse." 4 of them. All seniors from the football team. All part of Bryce's inner circle. They filed in, blocking the exit, and Cordelia understood with crystal clarity that she'd miscalculated. She'd thought the public exposure would protect her, that they wouldn't dare retaliate with everyone watching. She'd underestimated how much they had to lose. "Brave of you to be alone," Marcus said, stepping closer. "After what you did to our boy Bryce." "What I did?" Cordelia kept her voice steady, hand-finding the metal tongs she used for print development. "I showed videos he made himself, documents he created. His own words. If that destroyed him, maybe he should have made better choices." "You destroyed everything!" Another player, Jackson, slammed his fist into the wall. "Season's over. Scholarships gone. My future was built on assaulting girls and cheating," Cordelia interrupted. "Then it wasn't much of a future." Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that preceded violence. "You know what? Bryce was too gentle with you. Too subtle." "Me? I don't do subtle." He lunged forward. But Cordelia was ready. The dark room was her territory. And she knew every inch. She dodged left. Throwing developer solution in his face, he screamed, clawing at his eyes. Stumbling into Jackson. "It's just soap solution," she said calmly. "But you didn't know that, did you? Just like those girls didn't know if you'd actually hurt them or just threaten." Scary, isn't it, not knowing? The door burst open again, this time revealing the new interim principal, Dr. Williams, flanked by security. Behind them, Cordelia glimpsed Lily Chen holding up her phone. Live-streamed the whole thing. Lily called out, including them admitting to assault and cheating. "Hi, college recruiters." The football players were escorted out. Marcus still whimpering about his eyes. Dr. Williams turned to Cordelia, expression unreadable. "Miss Ashworth, are you hurt?" "No." "Ma'am." "Good. Because I need you in my office. There's been a development you need to know about. The development, it turned out, was Vanessa Morrison Bryce's mother, school board member, and queen of Oakwood's social hierarchy. She sat in the principal's office like she owned it. Designer suit, immaculate. Lawyer at her side. Miss Ashworth, she said. Voice honeyed poison. I believe we need to discuss your future. I don't think we do, Cordelia replied. Not sitting. Your son is under investigation for assault. You're under investigation for covering it up. We have nothing to discuss. Oh, but we do. Vanessa's smile could have frozen hell. You see, your mother works for Quality Clean Services. I own Quality Clean Services. Well, 60% of it. Cordelia's stomach dropped. But she kept her face neutral. They'd anticipated this. Her grandmother had been making calls all weekend, but hearing it stated so baldly still hit hard. If you're threatening my mother's job, threatening? Vanessa laughed. Right and false. I'm offering. Drop the charges. Recount your story. Say you exaggerated for attention. In return, your mother keeps her job with a raise. I'll even throw in a college fund. $50,000. Cash. Wow, Cordelia said slowly. Bribery. In front of witnesses. Bold choice. Vanessa's lawyer shifted uncomfortably, but she waved him off. It's not bribery, dear. It's a settlement. Happens all the time. Ask anyone well. Anyone who matters. Here's the thing about people who matter. Cordelia pulled out her phone, showing a recording app clearly running. That definition is changing. See? My cousin in Chicago? He's been busy all weekend. Turns out Quality Clean Services has been laundering money for 3 years. Fake employees. Inflated invoices. Tax evasion. The FBI found it very interesting. The color drained from Vanessa's face. You're lying. Check your phone. I believe Agent Martinez is trying to reach you. Something about freezing assets and federal charges. Cordelia turned to Dr. Williams. May I be excused? I have a calculus test, 4th period. She left Vanessa Morrison sputtering threats that sounded increasingly hollow. In the hallway, her hands finally shook. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its wake. That was beautiful. Tyler Chen lounged against the lockers. Alone for once. Cordelia tensed, ready for another attack. But something in his expression stopped her. I'm not here to fight, he said quietly. I'm here to... Christ. I don't know. Apologize? Confess? Beg? How about explain? Tyler laughed bitterly. You want to know why I helped him? Why I went along with it all? I figured it out. He had something on you. My sexuality. The words fell like stones. Freshman year. He caught me. It doesn't matter. He's had it over me for 4 years. Every time I thought about refusing, he'd remind me how my very traditional parents would react, how the team would react, how everyone would react. Cordelia studied him, really looked for the first time, saw the exhaustion beneath the bravado, the fear masquerading as cruelty. You have 2 choices, she said finally. Come forward. Tell the truth about what he made you do and why, or stay silent and go down with him. But Tyler, the closet you're hiding in is already on fire. Might as well walk out on your own terms. She left him there, tears streaming down his face. Another casualty of Bryce Morrison's reign of terror. The rest of the day, blurred classes where teachers didn't quite know how to treat her, lunch in the cafeteria, where half the school wanted selfies and the other half wanted her dead. Meetings with lawyers and investigators and reporters who all wanted their piece of the story, but the real showdown came after school. Cordelia was walking to her grandmother's car when Bryce Morrison stepped out from behind the gym. He looked wrong designer, clothes wrinkled, golden hair unwashed, that confident swagger replaced by something desperate and wild. You? He snarled. You ruined my life. No, Cordelia said quietly, hand finding her phone. You ruined your life. I just documented it. I had everything. I was going to the NFL. I was a predator, a cheater, a bully who got off on hurting people weaker than you. She took a step forward, surprising them both. You want to know the funny thing, Bryce? I wasn't even your biggest victim. I was just the one who fought back. I'll kill you." The words came out broken, more plea than threat. "I've lost everything because of you." "Good. Now you know how your victims felt." Cordelia held up her phone. "By the way, this is being live-streamed to the police. You just threatened to kill me on camera. Again. How's that impulse control working out for you?" Bryce lunged. But this time, Cordelia didn't need to dodge. Tyler Chen stepped between them, followed by 3 other football players who'd been hiding their own secrets, their own shame at what they'd enabled. "It's over." "Morrison," Tyler said quietly, "you're done hurting people." The police arrived minutes later, adding witness intimidation and violating a restraining order to Bryce's growing list of charges. As they led him away, he kept screaming about unfairness, about his rights, about how she'd destroyed everything. Cordelia watched until the patrol car disappeared, then turned to find a crowd had gathered: students, teachers, parents, all witnessing the final fall of Oakwood High's golden boy. "What happens now?" someone called out. She thought about the investigation still ongoing, the trials ahead, the systematic changes needed to prevent another Bryce Morrison from rising. It would take years to fully clean house, to build something better from the ruins. "Now we do the work," she said simply. "The real work, the kind that doesn't make headlines but actually changes things." Over the following weeks, that work began. A new reporting system for harassment with external oversight, mandatory training for teachers on recognizing abuse, student advocates in every building, the athletics department gutted and rebuilt with accountability measures. Tyler Chen came out publicly, his story inspiring others to share their own. The football team, stripped of its toxic core, began rebuilding around players who understood that strength wasn't about domination. As for Cordelia, she finished her senior year not as a revolutionary, but as herself a girl who'd found her voice and used it. She took photos for the yearbook, documenting a school in transition. She started a support group for harassment survivors that grew beyond Oakwood, spreading to other schools, other towns, other girls, and boys who needed to know they weren't alone. The night before graduation, she stood in the dark room one last time, developing final prints. Not evidence now, but art portraits of survival, of change, of hope emerging from darkness. "You ready for tomorrow?" Lily Chen asked from the doorway. "Careful not to let in light. For graduation or for everything after?" "Both. All of it." Cordelia hung the last print, a self-portrait taken in the mirror she'd avoided for so long. Crown from spring formal perched defiantly on her head, mouse brooch glinting at her throat. "Yeah," she said, surprising herself with the certainty. "I'm ready." Graduation day dawned bright and clear. As Cordelia walked across the stage to accept her diploma, the crowd erupted. Not the polite applause given to others, but something fierce and grateful recognition of what she'd sacrificed and what she'd won. And somewhere in a vintage shop, a silver mouse brooch waited for the next girl, who needed reminding that small things could change the world. One exposure, one truth, one act of courage at a time. The spring formal of 2024 would be remembered forever, but not as an ending. It was a beginning. The night the mice realized they outnumbered the cats, and all they had to do was stand together and refuse to be prey. Cordelia Ashworth had shocked her entire school, but more importantly, she'd inspired it to shock itself.